Installment Sale Trust. Installment Sale Trust has been around since the early 70s. The program was actually created by Ernst & Ernst years before they were even called Ernst & Young. It was created by their in-house tax attorneys, so their own partners, when they retired, could sell back the partnership, defer the tax on that, and then take income from the trust. They started offering the program to internal clients. They still do. Now, they only use it as a one-off for specific transactions. So, somebody is in the middle of a mergers and acquisition deal. The person exiting would receive these. It goes by some other names occasionally, and out there in the marketplace right now, there's about a dozen knockoffs of the program. Now, every one of those is different than the program we're using in some very specific way. And I promise you, if they're deviating from the standard model, it's for their benefit, not the client's benefit. And it's a very straightforward program. It follows tax law exactly. In 19 years, I've never had an audit. We get letters from the IRS occasionally. Those letters are always been prompted by one of two things. Most of the time, the client CPA thinks they know better than we do and doesn't follow our instructions and doesn't use the forms we provide. The IRS, 18 months after the transaction, 24 months after the transaction, the letter comes in the mail. We've had to go so far as to refile 2 years amended tax returns. All of that's taken care of. To correct, we had to do that to correct the CPA's error. A couple of times it's been prompted by an escrow officer who just says, yeah, and then does it their own way anyway because they think they know better. So I'm telling you that not to sound arrogant. I'm telling you that because you're going to talk to some other professionals that are probably fairly competent people, and you're going to get a second opinion on this. If they have not read through all of our materials, they've not done due diligence with us, and they've not spent a couple hours with us, they are 99.9% unqualified to advise on this. They just don't know it. Okay, so, but it's not a complicated program. It is actually simple. And it's simple because everything's baked into the cake. In our program, our documents are wash, rinse, repeats, fill in the blank. So when you go to bake a cake, you buy the ingredients at the store. You don't have to grow your own vanilla. You don't have to research where it came from. You don't have to grow your own wheat for the flour. It's already made for you, right? So you can bake a cake in an hour, okay? So why? Because it comes in a box, the instructions are on the box, and everything's already been assembled. You don't have to become an expert in selecting the exact strawberry flavoring that went into the strawberry flavored flour for the strawberry cake, right? So it's the same thing here. We've already done all of that. It's already baked into the program. And we have a tremendous history on doing this. Our partners in the program, let me explain this first. Doing these things for transactions, they're called special purpose vehicles. And there's many different types of special purpose vehicles. And that's really where this comes down to. It's a vehicle that's created for a transaction. It's only going to do one thing for that transaction. For example, if we create a trust, it's not going to be out doing a bunch of other things. Or if we create a Delaware statutory trust or a special purpose LLC. It's an LLC, but it has a very unique operating agreement. It'll be handling one thing, okay? So everything it does is siloed in that one thing. It doesn't affect the rest of your life and the rest of your business. Sometimes we've used layered more than one type of trust or more than one type of special purpose vehicle in a specific transaction. So I'm going to explain the very basic, what's done 90% of the time. Then when we get the larger, more complex deals, we can handle those. We can layer that transaction in a way that benefits both sides of the transaction. Our trustees, fiduciary trustees, is one CB Administrative Services, and their staff, they're in Cupertino, California. They're headed by a CPA, former CFO. He's trustee for other types of endowments and things like that. I've known him for many years. He's taken 3 companies public. He's done some M&A deals on the private side as well. And I approached him in 2015 because we were using other trustee services. We were constantly having problems with them. Every time we talked to them, we had to train them all over again. Well, they're billing by the hour, so it's in their benefit to need to be retrained every time you talk to them. So finally, we got tired of the fees. We got tired of the security broker-dealer relationships which requires certain investments. And on the back end, they always demand revenue sharing, which means we have to charge higher fees or a lower rate of return, and sometimes both, to satisfy all the fingers in the pie. So in 2015, we decided we're going to set this up. It took us 2 years. We're going to set this up and get all the fingers out of the pie. So we represent the client. We represent the trust. We can act as a fiduciary. We don't have security broker dealer firms, outside advisors, other people sticking their fingers in. And all that does is increase the cost and lower the rate of return for the client, and very often increases risk. So once we cut all that out, we were able to reduce our fees way down. And we make the same per trust as we did before, just the client's paying a third of what they used to pay all in. Stuff they don't even see in the back end inside the investments. It doesn't happen anymore. Those things don't happen. IST Admin Services, that is an attorney here in Orange County. He has a lot of international clients. He's a famous asset protection attorney, trust attorney. Most of his deals are his clients. They're foreign investors, Argentina, China, Portugal, Germany. They want the money to stay in the US. They don't want to take any income. They just want to close of escrow, the money to land in a trust account, then they can go shopping for their next investment. So they're going to reinvest the money. And that's the majority of his deals. For some of the very complex deals, we will use him. I have referred people to him because there were very complex estate planning involved, things like that involved. It was a husband, wife, and maybe a brother, and they're all exiting a business, and now there's an estate plan issue or something like that. He's very versed on those things. But anyway, using these different types of things comes under special purpose vehicles. These are a few of our partners, not all, but our lead counsel is the law firm of Armstrong Teasdale. If you look at publications, they are consistently held out as the top tax attorney firm in the nation. 700 plus attorneys on staff. Their lead, who was an instructor teaching tax law classes at Harvard Law, he's peer reviewed repeatedly. He publishes monthly in Bloomberg. Michael Berwith, that is our counsel on these things. When Michael speaks, the IRS is taking notes. Just having his name on the letterhead means they're going to back off, ask a few questions, and go pester somebody else. Okay. There's a couple other attorneys there. We also have Lathrop GPM. They're in the top 5 as well. And on some of our deals, we engage Lathrop GPM. So 2 of the top 5 tax attorney firms in the nation are our legal counsel on these things. So if you talk to another professional and they disagree with something we're saying, they need to come get trained. We like training the client CPA and attorney. It always leads to more referrals for you and us. So we want to meet them. We want to go through the process because they always pop up at the end of the transactions. Hey, I got this other guy that's thinking of selling. Now, without the tax, he can afford to sell. We can also help you with your deals. There's 2 parts of negotiating a deal. There's price and then there's terms. Using the trust on the people exiting can greatly open up many opportunities for terms. Moss Levy Hartsign. They are the accounting firm that audits cities, municipalities, anybody issuing municipal bonds. They're one of many, but they do many of those, especially on the West Coast. They produce the financials so these municipalities can continue offering muni bonds. They do all of our financials and they do all of our tax returns for all of the entities that we create. These are a few of the banks that we are on their trust platform, which means their legal departments have reviewed us personally, professionally, our documents, our program, spend a tremendous amount of time with our tax attorneys. We get billed for all of that to get on there. We have to pay the bill for all of that. Cambridge Trust we use on very large transactions. They're expensive, their fees are high, but there's some things that come along for the ride doing business with them. But anything under 5 million, we go to City National Bank. And most of our transactions are under 5. Our average transaction is hovering around 2 million. All right. City National Bank, if you're looking for a business bank, I'd never done business with them until about 2.5 years ago now. We love them. Fees are low, service is high. We have no issues there. We're very happy. And we are on their trust platform to the point that our trustee logs in, creates all the trust accounts, puts all the information in. Then our rep there logs in, verifies everything, and assigns an account number. All right. Also, all of our accounts for the client have security. The client must log in with a 6-digit code from an app that changes every 30 seconds and approve anything we're doing. Nobody can Bernie Madoff anybody's money. We don't have access to the money to do it. The client must log in and approve anything we do before anything moves anywhere. Q Financial is my financial services firm. All of our financial services are in-house. That way we all work at extremely reduced fees and expenses. That makes it cheaper for the client. Okay. Our money manager for securities, he clears through Schwab. He is a registered investment advisor and he is in-house. That's why he works at about a third less starting fee, and the fees go down from there because he has no overhead, never has to find a client. He manages all of our assets for all of our trust. You can't get that anywhere else. So if a client wants to use their own advisor, that's fine, but they got to pay for that. That's not included. You got to pay for that. The client always comes back. We don't have anybody doing that right now. The client comes back and says, yeah, we'll let you manage these assets. Let him do what he's doing. You do what you're doing. Because there's no benefit to doing that. It adds no value whatsoever. It just increases their fees. Sell My FDX, we do a lot of FedEx transactions. If I just sat here and did on a slow month 3, a good month 9 FedEx transactions, make a very good high triple or 6-digit income, 7-digit income every year doing just that. All right. We basically get referred by FedEx unofficially to the people that are exiting. And the reason is they notice that all the transactions we're involved in are very smooth, going from one contractor to the next. And there's a specific business broker we use in those transactions, although other business brokers do bring clients to us as well. Sell My Business Now is for business brokers to generate listings. We have Tax-Free You, which is another one that helps realtors generate listings. These are listings that never would have engaged otherwise. So we help them get listings, bringing deals to the table. And there's a whole host of other partners that we have. I've been featured in Forbes twice. I changed careers in 2004 to become a financial advisor. I bought half of my advisor's practice so he could start winding down to retirement. He'd been my grandfather's advisor. He used to help me buy penny stocks when I was 12, 14, 16 years old, eating a sandwich at the corner diner from his office on Wilshire. And I asked him one day, why do you spend so much time with me, Carl? I'm only buying, $38 worth of stocks today. And he goes, well, I started doing it because your grandfather instructed me to, and your grandfather has a lot of money invested with us. He goes, but now I do it because I tremendously enjoy this time. And Carl, my whole life, he has dementia now and lives with his daughter in Santa Monica. But Carl became quite a mentor to me. We became very close over the years, just very close. So went on to, I wrote a white paper on how to have 50% more income and half the risk. And I'd only been an advisor for 6 months. So the firm I was with thought that was pretty arrogant to come 6 months into the industry and tell them how to do things better. And I says, I'm shocked you guys haven't figured this out already. That's my concern. It was so obvious to me. Come to find out, the security broker-dealer firms knew exactly what I was talking about. They make half as much money if you do it that way for the client, but the client's taxes are lower and he gets 50% more income. So they forbid me to use the plan with clients because it was not approved, because they held my license. So I resigned. It wasn't easy. Remember the old movie, Show Me the Money, Show Me the Money? He only left with one client, right? I left with all my clients because it's always good to have a bottom drawer file full of old emails they've sent. They helped me carry the boxes to the car. All right. So I left with 100% of my clients. They were just terrified I was just going to get out the door and not talk to anybody. That firm was out of business and they were all without a license 2 years later. In fact, I was interviewed as a witness against them for the things they were doing. By the way, financial services is a very dirty industry. It really is. Every year I have less respect for it than I did the previous year, and you can't get much lower. I'm negative numbers at this point. So, and it's not the people on the street you meet, by the way. Somebody holds their license, controls what they can do and say, or they can't make their mortgage payment and their career is on hold or can be ruined. That's why I went independent. So nobody can do that to me. All right. But most of them can't afford to do that. So they're doing the best they can for their clients with what they're allowed to do by the people that hold their license. So it's an unfortunate thing. I was featured again in Forbes later. I had a radio show called the Smart Money Hour for 4.5 years. Those of you in the LA area may have heard me on Sunday afternoons, Smart Money Hour, taking live calls, 97.1 FM, KABC radio, got carried on Bloomberg. I only got stumped once in 4.5 years, and it was a smart ass CPA that called in and asked about acquisition indebtedness. And I didn't know the answer. I promise you the following Sunday, it was well researched, and I opened the show with my answer to that question. So it only happened once, but he was pretty clever to do that. Anything we're going to tell you, we can verify because we have tremendous liability, fiduciary responsibility here. So keep in mind, there's the things you know you don't know. I don't speak Portuguese. I'm very aware of that. Okay. Speak a little Spanish. I can order a cerveza, but I don't speak Portuguese. I know that. What gets everybody in trouble is the things they don't even know, but they read something once or heard something once. And, oh, I've heard of that. Yeah, I understand that. No, you don't. You just don't. I've been shocked how much apartment owners don't really understand about their own investment, and yet they're successful. So basically, if you just manage it well and you keep your head down and keep pushing forward, you almost can't lose money, right? Unless you do something really stupid. But they don't truly understand how to maximize their income, what it is they own, and how to really manage it. They just do what the other guys do. They all follow the crowd. It's almost like the religion of real estate investing. And they have a series of religious dogmas that don't necessarily match up to the math or the science. But don't point that out, because then you become a heretic. And they won't talk to you, right? And they talk to their buddy who doesn't know any more than they know. It's shocking. It really is. So just remember, it's the things you don't even know that get you in trouble. All right. The other thing is, when you're talking about something like an installment sale trust or anything like this, people have paradigms, and there's no way around this. That's how the human brain works. So as you're receiving new information, it will be filtered through existing paradigms you have, and that's how you're interpreting it. So I'm describing one thing, but you're picturing something else. You're like, but I'm not interested in that. And it's the old Chinese parable. It's the blind men around an elephant. One's holding onto the trunk. And he says, an elephant's much like a snake. One's holding onto the back leg. No, you're wrong. An elephant's more like a tree. One's pushing on the side of the elephant. One says, no, you're both wrong. It's more like a wall. An elephant is like a wall. And they're arguing about what is an elephant. And none of them have all the information to make that decision. All right. So anybody we're talking to, even you guys, even myself, when I'm learning something new, we're trying to figure out what is an elephant. We don't have all the information yet. So stick through the process and understand how this really works, so you can understand what is an elephant. So you know if an elephant's what you even want. You might think you want that tree, but you got an elephant. You might want the snake. Well, you got an elephant. So you're not always getting what you think you're getting. We're following the tax code exactly as written and interpreted by the tax courts. We've already done all the due diligence. It's already baked into the cake. We just got to tell me what name I'm putting on top of the cake, and is it an anniversary or a birthday or whatever? Tell me what flavor you want. It's already baked in. So it's a few minor changes to do that. Now you can have your CPAs and attorneys do the due diligence. That due diligence is about $250,000 of what I've spent over the last 19 years on legal advice to do all this. You'll notice I don't ask for NDAs. I just send out copies of the presentation. I send things out. I do stuff. If you want to become a competitor, good luck. I'll see you $250,000 in 3 years from now before you have these relationships and all these things set up. All right. So there are 85 years worth of tax court rulings on how this is interpreted on individual situations. And we have all read all those. We've already baked it into the cake. So we've already figured it out. So we can discuss that and advise you how to handle each one of these situations. The other reason we don't have audits is we're following IRS manuals, not just this one, but a dozen others. And we're using IRS documents, and it's all recorded. We're not withholding any information anywhere. It's entirely unnecessary in this program to fudge the numbers at all. There's no benefit to doing. You just increase risk. All right. I mean, it's a good, just stay down the middle of the road, right down the middle of the road, nowhere near the fringes. It's a great deal. There's no need to cheat on any of this. And the reason is the IRS doesn't care. There's no taxable event if you use the trust, and taxes aren't due until there's a taxable event. You have a $3 million building. You have depreciated it down to $100,000. You got $2.9 million in taxable gain. When are the taxes due on that gain? When there's a taxable event, like a sale. But what if you sold it, but the trust sold it, not you? There's no taxable event there because you transferred it into the trust. The trust sold it to the final buyer. The money came back to the trust. No taxable event until you get income from the trust. That's taxable. The same as the rent. The rent you received is taxable. So it's all recorded in the forms. And these are just a few of the forms. But some of these forms are forms very few CPAs ever use. So we fill them out for the CPA to make sure it's done correctly. We figured out early on, if we pre-fill out forms for the escrow company and the CPAs, and we pre-fill these things out for them, it results in a lot fewer letters from the IRS, and then we have to go back and submit amended documents, right? So it's just cheaper for us just to do it up front for them. By the way, we don't replace the client CPA. Just keep your CPA. We'll train him up on this part. Just let him keep doing what he does well. All right. This works on residential property, whether it's a rental property or somebody downsizing. We do about a half dozen, sometimes more deals with a single realtor up in, we do a lot more than that. But there's a single realtor up in the Cupertino, Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, where people bought a house for 60 grand in the 80s, and now it's worth 3.5 million. Yeah, they put $200,000-300,000 into it, but there's a huge taxable event. Now they want to sell and downsize because it's a 2-story house and they're both 80 years old, right? Well, there's a huge taxable hit there. We prevent that. So we get a lot of deals on that. About 70% of my transactions are the sale of a business because they got nowhere to go. But the thing is, for the business broker, now the owner wants to sell the real estate with the business. And oftentimes the real estate's worth more than the business, all right? So it helps both sides. Other appreciated assets, a commercial property is any commercial property. Multi-unit's the most popular. But any other highly appreciated asset. I've done artwork. I did a $22 million coin and stamp collection. I did I think it was 7 or 8 kilo ruby. It was really large. I got to hold it once. It wasn't gem quality. It was originally came out of a Buddhist monastery, and they fled to Taiwan with Chiang Kai-shek when Mao was chasing everybody out of China. So it's now owned by a nonprofit, and they did a crypto token against it and raised money. And the money's being used to fund orphanages and schools in Central and South America. And then we have the apartment buildings. The process is the same as a 1031, only we insert our trust here rather than the accommodator trustee for a 1031. We insert our IST trustee. Same steps in the process. You have a seller, you have a buyer. We're inserted here. The property goes into the trust, or assets go into the trust. They're sold to the final buyer, close of escrow. The money comes into your trust accounts because that's tax deferred rather than coming into your personal account or your business account, which is taxable. All right. And you carry a note against the trust, and you have securitized the trust and its assets. All right. And you have control via the note and via some other things. So the steps in the process here is you transfer it to the trust sells it. It doesn't add any time to escrow. It can still be a 30, 45 day part of escrow. And then at close of escrow, the money goes back to the trust account. And then there are quarterly payments that are paid out. Now you can direct the trustee to invest in many things. You can completely avoid the need for a 1031 and go buy another property. And you get to buy a property of your choosing at a time of your choosing, not some 45-day, 180-day window. Now, old landlords over 70, they're always saying, hey, hold on to that cash, Kev, because I'm going to go right back into real estate because that's where I made all my money. But they start getting quarterly deposits that are 30 and 50% more than their net rents were. Very few go back into real estate. It's the young guys, the 40-year-olds, the 50-year-olds that are still building their real estate portfolio that use us to avoid the need, legally, perfectly legally avoid the need for a 1031. Plus, it provides diversification in their investments. So they're getting the best of both, all right? When you buy the next building, you don't have to carry over the low basis from the previous building. That's held in the trust. So now you get all that really sweet first 10 years of depreciation all over again. And that's a significant part of the profit, the gain of buying these properties is that first 10 years. All right. The final step, we do everything in 10-year notes, not because 10 is a round number, because market cycles are about 8.25 years. So it's a market cycle plus 2 years. That's the real reason. And you can renew the notes as often as you want. It can go on into perpetuity. The trust can be renewed. It can go 21 years, but it'll renew automatically every 20. So those rules of perpetuity, you just renew the trust and you just reset the clock. All right. So this can go on for many generations. We have a person in Arizona right now selling off 36 single-family homes because she wants to go into apartment buildings. Well, how would she ever coordinate 1031, 36 properties like that? It's just not going to happen. So she's selling them all through the trust, and then she's going to go shopping for apartment buildings. This was a transaction, $2,560,000. Their cost basis had been depreciated to $350,000. They had to do $75,000 in improvements to close escrow. $425,000 became their basis. There was $135,000 in commissions and expenses involved in the sale, making the taxable part of the gain $2 million. The gains taxes on that would have been $732,000, state and federal. CPAs are all constantly giving you the federal number for this, the federal number for that. Well, what's the federal and the state? And we were talking to some business brokers in New York. They got federal, state, and city in New York City taxes on top of that. So it's incredibly high. In this scenario, this was a Cupertino property, $732,000. That leaves them $1,267,000 to invest. That generates $76,000 a year in income, plus growth on the assets if the advisor does well. By using an installment sale trust instead, we gave them the $425,000 in advance of escrow. That way they got their basis out before escrow. And only the $2 million went into the installment sale trust. We got paid back at close of escrow. So we advance that so they don't have to put their basis, which is non-taxable, into the trust. That's theirs completely separate. We help them do that. So in other words, we spend time helping people give us less money into the trust. Why do we do that? Because knowing everything we know, if we were on the other side of the table, that's what we would want. I'm shocked how many people say, no, keep the $425,000. I want you responsible for the return of that money. That way I don't have to deal with it. But some people do want it out. But it is an offer that we make. The $2 million in the trust generates $120,000 a year in income plus growth. And that's a 57% better scenario. But I've always got the guy say, nah, I can do better on my own with my $1.2 million than you can the $2 million. No, no, and no. You invest that money, you got to pay taxes every year on it. Over here, it's tax deferred. You see, if I'm a fat old man, I had a heart attack and open heart surgery. I'm out of shape. I can beat Usain Bolt to the finish line if I start the race far enough down the track. And he has to stop ever so often and back up 30%. The taxes. He runs, has to stop, back up 30%. Runs, has to stop, back up 30%. And the fat old man just huffing and puffing to the finish line. He won't catch me. It's very, very difficult to be in this scenario and ever catch up to where you're going to be following our scenario. And anything you can do with that $1,267,000, you can do with the $2 million. Just direct the trustee. And now you get to do it with all the money, and you get to enjoy tax deferral on the gains without having to use like an IRA or 401k or something like that, right? So you get all those benefits without having to do qualified accounts. The reason is we're earning a rate of return on the principal. We're earning interest on interest. We make more money than we're sending you. We don't make 6, we make about 11 after all fees and expenses. When I'm using numbers, I'm always talking after all fees and expenses. I'm talking net numbers. We make about 11. We send you 6. Why? We want the assets to grow because you want 6% of a bigger number later, right? You want the income to keep going up for generations. But see, we're earning interest on money that would have been lost to income taxes. Again and again and again. The compounding effect of all that money working for you, you can't beat it. If you really want to buy that stock, talk to the trustee. Now you can buy it with all the money. This is an audited return. These are rates of return, not average. People say the S&P average is 10.4 the last 10 years. That's a mean average. That's not a rate of return. Depends on the sequence those returns happened in to what the final number is going to be because of the compounding effect. This here is a compounded rate of return. This is an audited account. This is a principally insured account. Zero risk to the investor. Our worst 10 years, 10.73. The last 10 years, 11.44. Our best 10 years, 14.31. Here is another principally insured audited return. This is an account because we use multiple accounts. We diversify inside the trust. But the client can buy anything they want. They don't have to buy these. This account always earns 2% regardless. Its worst 10 years, 11.64. That was also the last 10 years. See, these numbers came in January. This is through 12/31/22. Our best 10 years was 2002 through 2012. That was an ugly 10 years for the market, but we made 23. Because when the market went down, we still made 2. When the market went up, we did whatever the market did plus a bonus. Not a bad way to invest. This is a more conservative account, but look at the numbers here. The worst, last 10, and best. This is an account that has less volatility, which makes it an excellent generator of income. But the returns here are still twice what you're pulling out. These are some of the indexes we use, but we buy options against the index. The index makes 6, we get 9 because we buy 150% options against the index. If the index loses, we're only out the option fee. We didn't actually lose any money. All right. So if you look at, let's just take our worst 10-year period, 17, 11, 15, 18, 13, 12, 18. But look how many here are in the 20s. 28 here. So these are audited returns. Believe me, we can do very, very well generating income from the trust. The other thing, just because the trust exists and the note exists, it creates something called an insurable interest. Because there's an insurable interest, a bank will finance the insurance policy. The client doesn't buy the insurance policy. The bank does because the bank wants the income on the cash value, the dividend income on the cash value. By the way, it generates more dividends than the bank charges, so the client gets tax-free income. You put $1 million on the trust, you get a $2 million death benefit. You put $2 million in the trust, you get a $4 million death benefit. This is over and above whatever the trust is going to generate in income and growth. Keeping the building for that step up in basis at death, this is worth twice the step up in basis. The other reason we do it is it solves the tax problems on the other side. They have tax-free money to pay off the taxes. Another way of calling this would be a structured installment sale. All right, so it is an installment sale, but there's a lot of structuring going on. All right, that's a deeper conversation. This is a fact finder sheet that every property owner can fill out, except for one line here. They got to look at their tax return to get it. Takes them a few minutes to fill it out, and it generates this report. This report comes from TurboTax, so it's as accurate as the numbers you put on the sheet. This was John and Mary. I changed the last name to Jones. That wasn't their last name. It was John and Mary. There is no 406 West Elm Street, but it was a 20-unit building in Los Angeles in that zip code. They were 51.3% better off at the trust than they were for keeping the building, not even considering the future benefits that the trust creates. So no more tenants and toilets, they're retired. They tried to migrate over to having professional management, and that didn't go well. So every one of our deals, we want to do this. We don't give samples out. We don't show this to anybody because they'll look at that and say, that's too good to be true. No, never give anybody a copy of one of these. Have them fill out the form and get their numbers because they can't unsee it once they've seen it, and it's their numbers. then they understand. All right. 51.3, by the way, I've had these that were over 100% better. We were doubling their income versus what they were getting from the property. 51.3 is actually pretty average. Okay. All right.